Hello ladies and gentlemen, Deja Vu here, bringing you the 6th set of SKT1 and Samsung Khan. Looks like Samsung Khan was not going to let Fantasy build up momentum, not going to throw out Great or something like that on Fighting Spirit. They're going to bring out the big gun, going to bring out the Lord of Iron himself. Stork is here, going to take on Fantasy in a PvT. Should be very, very exciting. We got Fantasy in the top left in brown, got Stork in the bottom right and look like yellow or something like that. Should be a very, very exciting game. Both these players are extremely good, extremely knowledgeable about this this matchup, and this map is not old by any stretch of the means, but certainly is very well known to both of these players. Nothing gonna catch each other by surprise, and I'm just gonna try and look up who has the career edge, because I'm sure both these players have played several times, and it looks like, wow, Stork's got a pretty big edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 wins to 4 losses. So Stork has had Fantasy's number, it looks like, overall. Beat Fantasy in the, hard to tell, considering they have 1, 2, yep, beat Fantasy in the Incruit OSL, beat Fantasy in the Ever OSL in 2007, beat Fantasy in WCG Korea, beat him in the All-Star match. Wow, Fantasy took a lot of lumps from Stork. Actually, no, I read that wrong. Actually, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 2. 7 wins to 2 losses. 7 wins for Stork. 2 wins for Fantasy. Read that wrong because for some reason when I typed in Stork's match list, for some reason when I typed in Fantasy, it also brought in Dark Elf, Iris, and Casey, and Flash because they played on the map Fantasy. So had a couple extra games there counted that I didn't notice at first. But yeah, Stork has had Fantasy's number in the past. They haven't played in about 4 months or so. It's been a little while. But yeah, I mean, Stork has been pretty damn awesome for the last, few months, last couple months. Ever since, I mean, the first round of Pro League, Samsung Khan not necessarily throwing out Stork every week, not necessarily throwing out their top players every week, kind of lollygagging it, but now that they've been throwing out their best players, Samsung Khan has moved their way up the rankings. Stork has been able to show why he's so good, why he's an S-class player, and showing that very few players can stand up to him. The number of players that can beat him on, or even really compete with him on a game in and game out basis can be pretty much counted on one hand. I mean, there aren't a lot of them that if they were to play like a best of 25 series or something, the number of players who could even send it to a set like 20 are not many at all. Stork is that good, so look out, Fantasy. Stork's really got your number, and Fantasy is really a player that depends on preparation to do really well. He does really well in best of series. He does very well when he's given time to practice and come up with builds. New maps, I feel like Fantasy would be very good at. Those types of things. Anything that's preparation based is where Fantasy particularly excels. Now, in Winners League, you can do 1 or 2 games easily. You can especially prepare Fantasy and be like, alright, Fantasy, we got Jaedong in this series, so your job is to take down Jaedong on this map. And, you can prepare Fantasy for that type of thing, and he'll probably have a really good chance of winning that game, and then, maybe prepare him for the next game after that. But the third game, wow, does Fantasy have it in him to win 4 in a row? That's the real question here. Can Fantasy just play without having a set strategy in mind for his opponent? That's been prepared and practiced out with his coaches. That's really a question here, and don't know. Well, I guess we'll get to see that here. If he can beat Stork flying off the seat of his pants, that question will certainly be answered at least a little bit. I know I question. I think a lot of people actually question Fantasy's ability to do that type of thing. To play without a lot of preparation. And we'll see what he's got here. Looks like Stork has a probe at the 12 o'clock position. Might be going for a proxy here of some form. We're looking around. We'll see what that probe does. Is he going to throw up a proxy? Haven't seen any tech for Stork yet. Could also just be going for a 1-gate core into Nexus. That is a relatively popular build as well. And there it is. There's 1-gate core right into Nexus. And that's a great counter to Siege Expand. Just get your base up just as fast as your opponent. It's a nice little way to do it. You don't really fall behind economically at all, and you can still produce units as well. So at least out of that one gateway, and it's pretty easy to throw it on the second gateway. Should Stork decide to do a double expand, take a third base, I'd say the 6 o'clock or maybe the 3 o'clock. Either of those would be possible as well. I would guess probably the 6 o'clock is where he would go. Less places to defend then, and It would be pretty cool to see a double expansion from Stork and try and turn this into a big time macro game. I would really like to see that. Looks like Fantasy's throwing up an engineering bay just in case there's maybe a DT rush or a reverse or something like that. And when you go for that siege expand, that's something you have to do. You have to get the engineering bay up relatively early just in order to prepare, because you have virtually no scouting information. You really don't know a lot about what your opponent is doing in a siege expand. So this is kind of a requisite of what's going on here. Fantasy actually pushing out with his units kind of weird to me. Usually in siege expand you play very defensively, and you don't want to split up your forces at all because tanks individually can be picked off quite easily. And Stork, fortunately for Fantasy, Stork hasn't seen this. He's got a probe there watching, waiting to see what building, see when a command center comes up, but hasn't actually bothered to scout out at all. And actually that probe being discovered by Fantasy once again and taken out. Fantasy just has fantastic scouting. Is there a player with better scouting than Fantasy? I don't know. That was pretty sweet. I mean, he's caught 2 proxies on him already on new maps too, like where you wouldn't really necessarily expect to see proxies. So very, very cool by Fantasy. I mean, match point, maybe not technically a new map, but you know, newer map. And he's caught both of them by very, very early too, early enough that he was able to prepare. So some very cool stuff from Fantasy in terms of his scouting information. It looks like Stork is going to try and take a relatively quick third. Not quite a true double expand, but still a very, very quick third. And that's going to help him catch up economically and really allow him to get a lead economically. Right now, it's pretty even right now. Jangbi's economy will kick in slightly before Fantasy's, but with that third base, Storks will really be able to kick in. And 3 base versus 2 base is a very comfortable position for Protoss. 3 base arbs versus 2 base, whatever a Terran decides to do, it actually is a very, very nice spot for a Protoss player. Not too much to you could just build up, macro up off of your 3 bases, off of like 9 gateways, produce a Stargate, and start pumping out Arbiters, and just play a very heavy macro game, and just use your army positioning to try and win you the game, which is pretty cool. It looks like Fantasy is actually coming out here for a little bit of a push out with a bunch of vultures. This is a more aggressive siege expand than I normally have seen, and he's going to pay for a little bit because a probe has snuck into his base and is going to get a nice little scout out here. It looks like Fantasy is actually going to try and set up a contain on Stork, and I don't know if Stork has seen it yet. Maybe just waiting for that Reaver. He's got Dragoons there, could actually do something here. Stork's got to be very, very careful. Got to be very, very careful. He's got some very, very good micro, though sometimes it can backfire against him. We have seen that before against Flash. He had some pretty bad micro and lost that game. But not here, able to micro against those mines pretty well, taking out almost all the vultures. And Siege Tech has finally finished, and now this is going to be a tough little spot here for Stork. Stork's going to have to build up forces, and once he gets enough speed lots and Zealot bombs ready, then he'll be able to push out here and try and break this. There's the Zealot bombs, there's the Reaver as well. Reaver getting some nice damage there on that Siege Tank. If he can get a second Scarab buff, yeah, he gets a second Scarab buff, able to pick off the tank. It looks like the tanks are in full retreat. This bunker is not going to live very long. Second tank goes down. That last tank is not going to be able to do too much. The tank is going to go down to 1 more hit. There it is, and another tank has been brought up from the back, but Stork has completely deflated this push, taken everything out of it, and Fantasy is in full retreat mode, and Stork with some